again, please.
Fancy, I'll give you go on set 502 by the clock.
Copy.
No, that's not your small. You have to put that on.
Put it down low and it doesn't go down.
It's got me to space it back twice, so I have to take good care of that.
And we are at T-minus 9 minutes and counting in a series of missions to the nearest space station. And we will leave Andy Thomas aboard MIR. He will be the 7th and final U.S. astronaut to call the station home.
All personnel, the countdown clock will begin in 3 minutes. Launch status check. Verify ready, resume count. Go for launch. Say go or no go. OTC.
OTC, go.
TVC. TVC, go. TTC. TTC, go. LPS. LPS, go. Houston flight.
Flight to go.
Hey, Terry, looks like weather's good. Looks like we got a good vehicle, and we're going to try to get you out of town tonight, and be looking forward to seeing you back here in 9 or 10 days.
Thanks a million. We'll see you in a few days.
Flight crew, OTC, close and lock your visors and initiate O2 flow.
And we have a go for auto sequence start. Endeavour's onboard computers have primary control of all the vehicle's critical functions.
15.
T-minus 13 seconds.
10.
9. 8. 7. 6, we have a go. Start. 4. 3. 2. 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Endeavour, continuing the union of U.S. and Russian space endeavors.
Roger, roll, Endeavour. Stay on there with an hour for the Wolfman.
All maneuver is complete. Endeavour is now in a heads down, wings level position, headed to a rendezvous with the Mir space station. Endeavour now traveling.
As the
at about
Space Shuttle
520
Endeavour
miles
blasts
per hour.
off to the heavens, on board are 7 remarkable people.
Endeavour Houston, go with throttle up.
Roger, go with throttle up.
6 NASA astronauts and 1 Russian cosmonaut are all members of an elite few, those who are chosen to break the bonds of Earth's gravity.
Endeavour's traveling at the speed of about 2,000 miles per hour. 2 minutes, 9 seconds into the flight, the booster officer confirms good separation of the solid rocket boosters.
One of the astronauts is Dr. Andy Thomas, a space engineer born in Australia. He was selected by NASA in 1992. But Thomas began his journey to join MIR 12 months earlier in Moscow. He began training at the Russian Space Agency's Star City complex. For Thomas to become NASA's last astronaut to join the troubled Mir, he must graduate as a fully fledged cosmonaut.
Some people thought that I was crazy. They would say to me, you know, you're going to have to go and live in Russia, endure the winters, and you're going to have to learn Russian. And my reaction was, well, that's why I want to do it.
For 4.5 months, home for Andy Thomas will be a place where night turns into day every 90 minutes. A non-dimensional world, no up, no down. Gravity is ineffective here. All astronauts must adapt to the weightlessness. It rules their every move. Although Thomas has been to space once before, as part of his cosmonaut training, he must make a journey on what is known as the Vomit Comet, It's a Russian transport plane that defies gravity by repeatedly climbing, then dropping into free fall.
That was a lot of fun. What we were doing there was practicing donning and doffing the suit in zero gravity, doing it yourself, just so you get a sense of how you can get into the suit in zero gravity. It's actually easier to do that in zero gravity than in 1G. Also handling large masses in zero gravity, where something may be weightless but it has a lot of mass and therefore a lot of inertia, and you have to handle things carefully or it can upset your own balance.
When you see the changes is when you come back to Earth, and then we really notice difficulties with keeping your blood pressure up. You notice it with the neurologic function and reflexes. You notice it with bone density mass for the long duration flyers and that sort of thing.
Intense medical scrutiny is vital. To perform well, it's critical that the body's cardiovascular system copes with the stresses of life without gravity.
When you stand up in normal gravity, you know, most of your blood volume is contained in the venous system of your lower extremities. Well, in zero gravity or microgravity, there's none of that. Your blood volume redistributes to the torso. So what that test does, it applies a negative pressure to the lower extremities and torso and pulls the blood down towards the feet.
This same test will be applied to Thomas in orbit on Mir to make sure his fitness in space matches his condition here on Earth.
Take me out. Take me out, please. You don't actually have to be as fit as you might think. You know, you don't need to be an Olympic athlete. And you don't need to be, you know, an Arnold Schwarzenegger or something. In fact, you wouldn't want to be. That would be bad in a confined small spacecraft. You have to be reasonably healthy, I think. That's all.
Thomas makes time each day for at least an hour's exercise. These are hallowed surroundings. The world's first man in space, Yuri Gagarin, also trained here in this Star City gym 40 years ago. A typical day involves 8 hours of training, either in the classroom or in a mock-up of the Mir space station. At the end of it, he returns to his accommodation, but there's no time to relax.
It's been a lot of work because it's all been in Russian, so there's a huge overhead of labor involved in reading the technical manuals, for example, understanding the words that they use, and understanding the concepts. Right now, I'm pretty tired.
The pressure is beginning to tell. Thomas faces his final exams.
I'm actually tempted to say, look, this is too much for 1 week. I've kind of, in a way, I've let them overextend me for this week. There's no doubt about it. Too much exams. We'll see.
Andy Thomas and the 3-man crew that will join him in space have an 8-hour test mission ahead of them in the Mir mock-up.
It's really a pre-flight qualification exam for the crew to ensure that they're familiar with basic procedures, they're able to work together well and deal with problems that come up. And they have a lot of specialists from the supporting organizations here to make an evaluation.
The crew will simulate a full day's orbit aboard Mir, activating systems, conducting experiments, and checking and maintaining equipment. The examiners check their every move on closed-circuit TV.
It's pretty detailed. They want to see that you understand the system, how it works, what it does, and why it's there, and how to operate it. So there's quite a deep level of detail in it.
Для 3-го и 10-го, правильно, для всех. 3-10.
Начинать
Не надо.
Хорошо. Хорошо.
6. Контроль датчика.
As Thomas activates MIR's monitors, his commander, Colonel Talgut Mushbear, checks that he's following the correct procedures. Mushbear is a former fighter pilot and knows MIR backwards. He lived aboard it for 4 months in 1994. Flight engineer Nikolai Budarin is also a MIR veteran. He was a crew member for the first docking mission with NASA's shuttle in 1995. The fourth crew member is a Frenchman, Leopold Earhartz, who's on his first mission into space. Andy Thomas will be the first of this team to board the space station when the shuttle Endeavour takes him to dock with MIR.
Нет, сначала нужно в РС перевести. Г-73.
His colleagues, using a Russian spacecraft, will rendezvous with him a week later. In their training, it's essential that the crew know not only how to operate the space station, but also how to cope if things go wrong.
И тогда мы должны все подготовить станцию, чтобы быстро уйти.
Yeah, we're going to check the procedures that you use in the event of a fire or a depressurization of the station, which requires that we go around and check the position of various valves on the hatches and pieces of equipment to make sure that things are ready in the event that we have to do an emergency exit. We can just grab everything and go.
If that happens, the crew's salvation will be this tiny capsule, the Soyuz. Just 3 meters wide and 7 meters long, the Soyuz is permanently attached to the side of MIR in case of an emergency. Lying on their backs, it would take the cosmonauts less than a day to make it home to Earth, 385 kilometers below. In this test, the crew simulates an emergency descent. In this situation, the Soyuz would shed its instrument and orbit modules and punch through the atmosphere, then parachute either into the sea or onto land. To prepare for such a drama, this MIR crew underwent survival training where they were dropped into the sub-zero Black Sea in a Soyuz capsule.
I didn't know what to expect because, you know, I just thought, well, Soyuz is small, maybe this is going to be claustrophobic, underwater, you know, it's a bit disturbing to look out the window and see fish. It's not what you expect in a spacecraft. It was a tough exercise. We were actually in the capsule bobbing around in the water for 2 hours just to change our clothes before we could get out. It was hard work, very hard work. Lost 1.5 kilograms of water in the process, just sweat.
Today's the day Andy has been striving towards for 12 months. The moment he officially becomes a Russian Space Agency cosmonaut. This is the last time a NASA astronaut will receive this honor and join MIR before the agency turns its attention toward building a new international space station.
For me, it was about 14 months of training, squeezed into 12 months to get to this point. And a lot of energy, too, I might add. So it's very gratifying to have this closure.
Now a fully fledged cosmonaut, Andy Thomas flies back to America as Endeavour, which will deliver him to MIR, is rolled out at the Kennedy Space Center. At 55 meters tall and 2 million kilograms, Endeavour will be making its perilous docking with MIR for the first time. After all the near disasters on MIR, media interest in the mission is high. In America's Congress, questions are even raised over whether the Thomas mission should proceed at all.
Well, we're going to have to talk along, right?
We're the Shuttle MIR docking flight number 8. And with that, I'll turn this over to you guys for questions.
The making of an astronaut takes years of training and focus. NASA interviews thousands of hopefuls each year, but only a handful succeed. Just why are some selected over others? What does it take to be made of the right stuff?
I don't know. When I sat with all the folks in the interview group that I was in, I wouldn't have picked myself. I would have picked a lot of other people over me. And how they picked me is a dark secret, but I'm glad they did.
Jim Riley is a mission specialist on Endeavour. With a PhD in geology, he is responsible for operating the shuttle's onboard systems and scientific payload operation. Michael Anderson has never been to space before. He's a pilot with a physics degree and knows what NASA is looking for when selecting astronauts. Men and women with a multitude of varied skills.
First of all, you need to have a good, solid technical background, so you're prepared to handle the challenges that are going to be thrown at you. But I think also you have to be a very flexible person. You have to be a person who can take changes rapidly and adapt to those changes. Then you also need to be a person who can work well with other people. We take a crew of 7 or 8 people and we put them inside this very small space shuttle and we put them up there on orbit for up to 20 days. And those people need to be able to work together during that time and to get along well.
After surviving the nerve-wracking final selection process at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, successful candidates are thrown into intensive training.
Change the print in between frames.
In our case, it was about 14 months long, and it was basically everything you need to know to operate the shuttle as a vehicle, and it covered everything.
But Kenneth has the latest and greatest, and he has a couple items he'd like to talk about.
It's one thing to train as an astronaut. It's quite another to be assigned to a mission. And the crew of Endeavour is now on a daily regime of launch and landing simulations, emergency evacuation exercises, and detailing life aboard the shuttle. This is the Shuttle Motion Simulator. It tests their capacity to cope with crisis after crisis fed to them by instructors. Malfunction scenarios bombard them as they practice takeoffs and landings, up to 1,000 times each. But Andy Thomas has one last hurdle to cross. All mission specialists have to be able to function as a flight engineer on a T-38 jet. But it's been a year and a half since Thomas has been near one.
It's busy. It's not something I've ever been accustomed to do. I never had the formal training that some of the military pilots have. And so you have to learn to think in a very dynamic situation. It's not easy to do. I think it's going to be fun. This is probably the most fun I've had in 18 months. Flying in these aircraft is considered essential as part of your crew training to be able to interact with a front seat pilot and work the controls and avionics systems.
Call for taxi. We'll use 140 as our total going speed today.
Town, that's a nice, ready to take off. 35.
Okay, you can go.
But then, the jet control systems malfunction.
Seems like this is... Yeah, I think that steering is screwed up. It's sounds like it's cycling or something. Seems like there's something wrong with it. Yeah, we got, there's some other problem here, because look at our balance, the fuel balance.
You know, I think we ought to get on the ground.
960, check wheels down, wind 350, 12, your wheels are down and we're clear to land, thanks.
Back home. First ride in a T-38 in a year and a half.
It was not easy.
It was a good experience. Well, the T-38 was not agreeing with it, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Let's go for auto sequence start.
And the handoff has occurred. Columbia.
This is a high-risk, high-cost calling. Just months before Thomas's mission to Mir, a drama unfolded that reminded every astronaut of just how dangerous such missions can be.
2, 1, and liftoff. Columbia with the Microgravity Science Laboratory.
Here at NASA's Marshall Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama, control room staff were, as ever, unaware of what lay ahead of the shuttle Columbia as it blasted off for a 16-day scientific mission.
Columbia's 3 main engines is now throttled back to 2/3 throttle to prepare the spacecraft to pass through the area of maximum air pressure and go supersonic. Columbia is traveling 650 miles per hour.
Yeah, Space Lab Huntsville for Janice. Go ahead.
Go ahead for Janice.
Now that you've removed the access panel, we'd like to see if you could verify the integrity of that cable.
The Roger came over to help me because I'm not real happy with what's going on
As
here.
Janet Voss, the payload commander, began activating the science experiments, her commander, Jim Halsell, received disturbing news from Mission Control.
My first knowledge that we had a problem which might impact the mission was from an electronic mail that I got from my boss. He said, hey, we're seeing a problem that inside the fuel cell, we are receiving instrumentation readings indicating that you might be in danger of having the fuel cell catch on fire or even explode.
For Susan Still, the pilot, the excitement of being on her first shuttle flight was soon replaced by a new reality, a real crisis in space.
And I saw you copy 511.
The fire would be uncontained and in a place where we can't put it out. So that would definitely be a catastrophic problem.
Columbia, Houston for Jim. We've made the decision down here to go ahead and safe fuel cell 2. First, however, we have a number of power down steps that will involve both orbiter and payload equipment for you to perform.
Switch 2 and 1 are now off.
The fuel cell was shut down, and almost all the lights on board were switched off to save power. The fire risk was gone, but the crew wasn't out of danger yet.
We can fly okay on 2 fuel cells, but it's the policy of our program to allow for a next failure. And if we were to have another fuel cell failure, then we would have difficulties coming back.
322, 23, 35.
Columbia, Houston, Simo on air to ground 1 and 2 when you're ready.
We're ready.
Roger, Jim, the MMT had all players in on the meeting right through from the factory, and the consensus is it will shorten the mission.
When the decision actually came down, hey, you need to come on home, get ready to clean up the vehicle and close the payload bay doors, and let's head it on home to the ranch. It was a surprise and a disappointment.
Columbia is being flown perfectly. I mean, it's on the proper approach path to KSC runway 33.
Kara's coming. Straddle the center line, nail that ball bar. There's 100 feet looking for 50. Nail the ball bar. A little bit to the right. Straddle the center line. Final flare, looking good.
Landing gears down and locked. touchdown. Drag chute deploy.
Wheels dash.
The shuttle Columbia landed at the Kennedy Space Center after completing only 4 days of its scheduled 16-day flight. At a cost of $500 million for the mission, safety came at a high price.
We are constantly on guard. One of the good heritages, I guess you would say, from the Challenger is that we are always looking over our shoulder, trying to figure out what did I miss, what is it that I haven't thought about yet that's going to reach up and bite me or the crew. And although that has an element of paranoia to it, it is healthy paranoia, I believe. And I think that that's the proper way to look at this job.
35mm for a lot about the window stuff. Yeah.
With Andy Thomas about to visit the most unforgiving environment of all, these last days before blastoff offer an opportunity to scrutinize the condition of Mir.
Some shots here where you can see looking at that panel between the 3 shots.
The Mir space station was launched in 1986 with a projected lifespan of 5 years. It's long since outlived that. And in 1997, just about anything that could go wrong did go wrong. The oxygen generators triggered a fire. Then the cooling system failed. But the most threatening incident of all was when an unmanned and remotely controlled supply ship smashed into Mir. The collision crippled Mir's solar panels and caused half of its power supply to be lost.
The crew of 2 Russians and 1 American worked excellently. They reacted in a very efficient and professional mode, and they done everything possible in such circumstances to save the space station and save their lives, actually.
514, 15 and 16 are complete. Negative, CM 141 to clean up the paper. Sure, Sam 141.
The fact that the Mir spacecraft is continuing in spite of some of the problems it has is testimony to the resilience and the hardiness of those systems. So I am not concerned about safety issues of flying on Mir.
Mir is safe. If it will not be safe, there won't be a crew on board.
When Andy Thomas enters the eerie world of Mir, he'll take the place of David Wolf, who's been living in the space station for more than 4 months. From his orbit above Earth, Wolf gives Thomas words of encouragement about the task that lies ahead of him.
And I would say after about a month, I was feeling extremely good, and after 2 months, I realized just how good you could feel in space. And I'm feeling better and better every day, enjoying working in space more and more.
He's going to be entering a world of cylinders with a lot of cables and experiments and hardware. The things that he'll be without will be, sunshine on the outside of the doors, wind in his face, breathing the fresh air.
Bonnie Dunbar, a PhD engineer, is the payload commander on her 5th flight. She visited Mir in 1995 on the first shuttle docking. But, she says, no matter how often she goes into space, it's still exciting.
It's always one of a sort of an instantaneous elation. I'm back. It's a new world. It's a different world. It doesn't matter how tall you are. I can reach any surface. I can work in any orientation. The vehicle looks different. The floor can be the ceiling can be the floor. And then it's time to start a very concentrated grand adventure.
As the Endeavour crew arrives at the Kennedy Space Center from Houston in their T-38 jets, their year of training for this one flight is over.
It's going to be a lot of excitement and anticipation because now you're going to have to really perform. You're going to have to do the job that you've trained so hard to do. There's no turning back now, and for me, that's what I've worked for all these years, and so I just cannot wait until that exact moment when those solid rocket motors ignite.
Never in my wildest dreams did I think that I would actually go and rendezvous, dock, and fly around with an orbiting space station. What a privilege. It's not only special for me to be involved with it, but it's just a special age to live in. You know, there's never been a century like this in recorded history.
As I go into the flight, I'm becoming more and more aware of the fact that I'm going to be gone for a long time. I won't be able to just go for a run outside and do the things that I do here, that I'll have to accept the lifestyle with two colleagues for an extended period of time. There's no doubt about it, it's going to be a big challenge.
Now the crew goes into quarantine. This is one of the last chances the astronauts and their families will have together.
My wife has been the foundation of this whole thing. You know, she's been very supportive. You know, I'm sure she's had times when she wished that she had married a preacher or somebody that didn't do this kind of work, but...
We're nearly hollow.
Yeah, which is what his name means. Hollow form.
I'm not going to say it's not hard at times. Sometimes it's very hard. That's why we need the support of the other spouses. You pick up the phone and you call one of them and say, talk to me. So I'm not frightened, and I don't think the other wives are either. We know that they've done everything they can, and the rest is left to God's care, and we go and watch and wish them well.
They have the harder job. Yeah, much harder than ours.
Everyone's trapped in their own thoughts, and you wonder if everything will work just right, get off the ground. Then the solid rocket's like you're thrust back in your seat like a kick in the pants. The solid rockets, they only last the first 2 minutes, and during that time, the vehicle really shakes quite a bit. The last 6 minutes, you're just on the main engines, and it's very, very smooth, no buffeting, no shaking, no anything. Then it's all over. You go from 3 Gs to no Gs in just 1 second. You are totally elated. I mean, suddenly you weigh nothing. You look out the window and there's the Earth right out there. It's just the most incredible blue and white and beautiful planet you could possibly imagine. I mean, it's stunning. You are elated.
I know a very common thing for astronauts to say, and it's true, is when you get up there and you look at the Earth's horizon, there's a beautiful, very skinny band of blue color, striated bands, but not very thick, and you realize that's our atmosphere. That's what we depend upon to live, and understanding that I fly around this globe in only 90 minutes. It can't be that big. We better take good care of it.
The shuttle Endeavour is now hurtling through space at 28,000 kilometers an hour. 33 hours after liftoff, it rendezvous with MIR. This delicate union demands almost microscopic accuracy as both spaceships maneuver carefully into alignment.
We're with you, Tidra C, and via MIR, we're looking in through your 2 overhead windows.
Home sweet home. It's an impressive sight, actually. It's just amazing. It's been described as a big mosquito or dragonfly, and it's right. It's got all kinds of wings on it. It's an incredible sight.
We will get 30 feet from MIR, and we'll look at the docking target there. And we'll read that and then execute a series of maneuvers to align ourselves with the docking target. And then Terry will press on in from there to go and dock.
docking module on MIR acts as an airlock, sealing the two vehicles, allowing safe passage from one to the other. With the ships now linked together, Terry Wilcott opens the hatch, and in the dark of space, one world greets another.
This is Mission Control, Houston. And greetings all around.
Reminder to push and hold the bip smooth.
This is the first human contact for the crew of MIR in 17 weeks.
Mr. Mayor, how are you? Good to see you guys. We can do it, buddy. Oh, this is wonderful. This is wonderful. Thanks for coming to get me. Although I could have lived fine a lot longer psychologically, physically, but there's a lot of fun and good business to be done on Earth.
Endeavour stays docked to MIR for 5 days. Several tons of science experiments, food supplies and fresh drinking water are transported from spacecraft to spacecraft. Then it's time to begin the separation procedure. For Andy Thomas, David Wolf's return to Earth signals the beginning of his own odyssey in space. It's time to bid farewell to the crew with whom he's worked so closely for such a long time.
It's sad, and you have mixed feelings. Imagine taking one of your friends to a desert island and giving him supplies, and then sailing off without him to leave him there for a few months. It's a sad thing. I assure you, everyone on the crew will have mixed feelings about closing the hatch and then leaving Andy on board MIR.
I think probably more than anything, it's going to be another amazing experience, because actually I'm going to get to watch the shuttle pull away and photograph the shuttle flying autonomously in space. You don't often get to do that in this line of work. I think it's probably not till later on that I'm going to really appreciate that it has indeed gone and that I'm there for the duration of the mission.
Each astronaut's stay on MIR comes at a price. NASA has no space station of its own, so since 1995, for the astronauts' combined 962 days on MIR, the United States paid Russia $400 million. As a mission specialist aboard MIR, Andy Thomas spends most of his time running diverse scientific experiments, from the cosmic ray detector to plant growth studies and the impact of zero gravity on the body.
Oh, both good. Perhaps the one that's taking most of my time, and certainly the one I find most sort of captivating from an interest point of view, is the growth of cellular tissue in a bioreactor vessel. And this is an attempt to grow human cancer cells in an artificial environment. The idea that you could synthesize an artificial tumor, which you could use for biomedical studies. So far, indications are that it's going quite well, and we're quite pleased.
For the first 3 weeks of the mission, Thomas shared his research space with 5 other cosmonauts. This was the changeover period, providing time to adjust to the strange realities of weightlessness.
You get used to the idea that you can have things like this in front of you, and that's normal. That's the norm. And you know, if you think about it, that's really a bizarre concept. You know, after 40-something years of living on the planet, I've not been able to do this. Now I can do this.
While this zero gravity can be an exciting challenge, back on Earth it can prove difficult to reaccustom to, as David Wolf found.
Sorry to keep you waiting. We had some testing to do. Oh, okay. Keep holding here.
I'll do that. All right.
It's tough. I won't kid you. I feel fine, but you'll notice I'm keeping my head pretty still, because if I turn my head very much, My body feels like it's accelerating into the next room, and the room will turn upside down, so I'm being very careful. But I feel about as I expected. It's hard to live in space, and it's hard to come back, and that's a lot of what our research is all about.
Back in Zero G, Thomas's crewmates have been spacewalking to repair the damaged vehicle.
I had the armchair view of it all. I was looking out the windows, and it was really fascinating to watch my two colleagues moving around outside in the pressure suits and handling the equipment and doing the work out there.
Let's go ahead and do your message.
While the astronauts stay busy and mentally occupied, there are certain small things that can cause dissatisfaction.
Well, let's see. All of us are missing tea and coffee with sugar. We all have a sweet tooth, and we bought a lot of tea and coffee, but it's without sugar. Every morning we complain that we have no sugar in our tea and coffee. When I made the menu up for my food, I thought, well, I'll be healthy for a few months, but in hindsight, I wish I'd perhaps not been quite so healthy and bought some coffee with tea with sugar. That's probably about all in terms of food that I'm missing. A hot shower would be very nice right about now, I'd have to admit.
But there are more fundamental issues that Thomas grapples with on Mir. This is as isolated as any human being can become from Earth. And the effects of that are beginning to tell.
It's a funny kind of isolation, actually, because you're actually not that far from Earth. When you look out the window, you can see it. You can see clouds, and you can see landforms. It's a fascinating view, of course. But you still feel a great sense of distance, even though it may not look that far. Particularly if you might be flying over your home city and you look down and see it.